Welcome in, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Another episode of the Gramblers podcast, episode 3 to be exact. I'm Cody Grant. That's Aaron Graff. Awesome show for you today. We'll hit on some educational notes as far as betting, especially with Aaron. He's going to talk about emotional betting with your heart, not your head, something you really don't want to do. We still have a bunch of NBA playoffs to get to, fantasy golf picks, as well as Vegas Golden Knights. I'll get a scare, but Aaron's bet lives on. We'll get to that and plenty more. Aaron, man, how you doing this week?
I'm doing well. Emotionally, not so great, but in general, I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty healthy. How are you today?
Doing pretty good. I love the Justin Fields jersey. I saw on your Snapchat it finally arrived, and you're repping it. And you actually went out of the house with it on, right?
I went out of the house for the first time with a Bears jersey since like 2016, where I was wearing a Robbie Gold jersey. I don't even know if he still played for the team at that point, but yeah, I feel confident. It's arrived. He's here. Justin Fields is here.
Jay
Greatest
Cutler.
quarterback, greatest quarterback in Bears history.
It still goes to Jay Cutler, I believe. And he
Still
did
goes,
mention
still
Jay
goes
Cutler
to
had a
Jay.
take I don't agree with. He said, don't start Justin Fields week one. I think they should. But of course, that will be talked about plenty more once the NFL season draws near. But you're looking good in that Fields jersey. I'll get one of myself.
Thanks, man. I would say the same, but I see a Milwaukee Brewers shirt for you, so I don't think that looks too good.
Yep, Brewers shirt and Tim Anderson bat flip always in my background. So that will keep going as far as our show and our trends.
We should
Um,
try to do a renovation for you there.
Come on over. How long of a drive is that for you?
Not worth it to change one picture and one T-shirt. Not worth it.
Oh, man, I'll take that as a win. Aaron, golf the last week wasn't so hot. What went right for you, but what went wrong for you?
Yeah, last week my pick of the week to win the tournament was Corey Connors out of Canada. He didn't have a bad week per se, but he was a heavy favorite to like win his group on day one of the tournament. Naturally being the best, highest ranked golfer in the group, that's usually what the odds are. Um, One of the guys in his group just took off. Kazire took off. He still won his head to head against Matt Jones, but I didn't bet that, so I lost that. Then day two, he was a favorite again, didn't win his group, but I only bet his head to head there. Day three, he won his head to head against John Augenstein. It came down to the 18th hole. John Augenstein's a up and comer guy. He should have been like an NCAA champion last year, but obviously COVID struck. So, and he's struggled so far. So Corey Connors was a heavy favorite there. I really had to sweat that one out. And then I didn't touch him on day four, but I was getting in my head, doing all kinds of parlays, not really looking at, I have spreadsheets for course distances, and I was just basically chasing because I was up and down so much this weekend, and that kind of really gets into our topic of emotional betting. So it wasn't strictly the golf, it was partially because I was touching like home run props and NBA player props over three pointers, things like that. And I was just going way too big on those, quite frankly. So
Yeah. So, what are some of the picks you made, like home run props? You just pick guys you really like, that you're a big fan of. Same thing with the NBA over unders, things like that.
Well, so I hit on my 27th birthday this year, earlier in May. I said, hey, Mike Trout is the greatest baseball player I've ever seen. He wears number 27. He's going to hit a home run on my birthday, on my 27th birthday. It's just going to happen, right? He did. And that was a heavy payout. Those become dangerous because then down the road, you're like, this is easy. I know when a guy's going to hit a home run kind of thing. Or for example, I bet Chris Bryant to hit an opening day home run, and then he hit a home run day two. So I was like, oh, I was just a day off. I was so close, kind of thing. Um, part of emotional betting, part of what gets tricky is when you start winning a lot, even props or in general. Like let's say you win 10 normal, minus 110 odds in a row. You start thinking, okay, I'm really good at this. Now I'm going to start, throwing a little bit of house money. It's called house money out on those prop bets that are less likely to hit. They have heavier payouts, but once you start over betting your house money, that adds up. And then sometimes you end up cutting into your normal funds, which is what happened this weekend for me. I ended up losing overall because I had 2 big golf bets hit. Then I had Luka Doncic over 30.5 points in game 3. He had the first like 11 or 12 points for the Mavericks. Like it was like, okay, this is going to hit now. Playoff Luka is here today. So I had that pretty big. So I had 3 big bets in my pocket. And then I kind of just start overlooking like, oh, that's the next game. I got to bet this. And I had Nolan Arenado to hit a home run against the Diamondbacks the game after he did. So he hit one, I think, on Friday, I want to say, or maybe it's Saturday. It's a 3-day weekend, so I get the days mixed up. And then bet him the next day to do it again. And I bet that heavier than I bet the Cardinals to win outright. So those prop bets typically got to be like the cherry on the top of the ice cream. Like bet what you think is going to happen in the game. And then if you have a prop that you like, that's your cherry on top. I did it in reverse order. So even though the Cardinals won and I had money on that, I ended up losing money on the game overall because Nolan Arenado did not home run. So that becomes taxing. And I funny story this weekend, I bought some groceries and I loaded my fridge up and I walked away, and I don't go into my fridge very often. So probably about 8 hours later, like after I slept, I opened my fridge and I realized it was partially opened all weekend. So I had to throw out all those groceries. And when you're having when you're having that bad of luck over the weekend, you probably shouldn't be betting. I'll tell you, those things run together. So
what's that saying? You need to buy a lottery ticket today because you're having such good luck.
Exactly.
Very similar to sports betting. I would think, though, that sports betting, you can tilt the odds a little bit better in your favor as far as just gambling on the lottery, but still, there's a lot of luck involved. I really liked Philly to cover the spread tonight. By the way, we're recording on a Monday night right after the Sixers-Wizards game, but Joel Embiid went down, and of course, the Wizards came out on top. There's just things like that are going to happen that you really can't foresee. Even though Embiid is a guy that is extremely injury-prone, it's still one of those things where you just really never know. So when it comes to those bets that you make, Aaron, you find a guy you like. Are home runs your favorite thing to bet on when it comes to those props? Or over under 3-pointers? Do you have a favorite, or do you just kind of go with the flow?
No, I absolutely hate those bets. I don't. I mean, they're not winning bets in general. Okay, so what do the league leaders have? Like 16 home runs right now, and we're 40 games in, 50 games in at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, 55 for the Rays. Yeah, 55-ish games, and the league leaders have, I want to say 16 home runs. Let's see. Yeah, 16 home runs. 4 guys are tied with 16 home runs. So you're taking basically not quite, a little over 20%, I guess, of games in theory, but sometimes they hit 3 of those home runs on one day or 2 of those home runs on one day. So no, those are not winning bets. Those are like parlays. They're sucker bets. They're prop bets. When you hit them, you feel amazing. But when you hit them, it ends up becoming trickier because then you're like, hey, I won X number of dollars here. Now I can just put that there. The other side of emotional betting is obviously when you're in a losing rut. You basically lose one bet, you lose the next, then you start parlaying stuff, or you take heavier odds kind of thing, or then you start betting the underdogs and you get in a further losing rut. You see that in a casino a lot. I don't generally get myself into that trap. I've seen it on a roulette wheel where a guy said, well, hey, I'm going to just keep betting 5 because eventually 5 has to hit. And about 5 spins in, he was thinking like, all right, well, it's due now. And he just kept going. And eventually he lost all of his money, walks away. And probably about 20 or 30 minutes later, one of his friends sees that same wheel hit on 5 after he's been long gone. And he walks over and tells him, yeah, it just hit 5. And he had a freak out. I don't understand those freakouts. Roulette is 1 in 38 every spin, basically. So if you're gonna do that and you hit that, good on you. But those home run props, again, they're very rare. It's hard to hit them, and usually I have my emotional distress betting when I'm winning a lot. It kind of a flip side, I guess, a reverse for sports betting. When I win a lot, I start over betting, and then I find myself eventually kicking myself for betting the money that I won, as opposed to going on the losing streaks. When I go on losing streaks, I call it. I say, okay, today's not my day. I just lost 4 in a row. That's it. We're not gonna dig ourselves into a bigger hole than we're already in. But when you win a lot, or when I win a lot anyway, that's where I get into trouble. So
to piggyback off that point you made about going on a 4-game losing streak and lost a few bucks and you just quit while you're behind. A lot of sports gamblers, especially during COVID times, went to betting and they lost their livelihood on it. So when we talk about sports betting, you obviously want to be responsible because it could be a lot of fun, but it could also be a tragic ending to your bank account. That's one thing. So one thing I like to do is go into each month with a amount of money that I'm okay with losing. And once I hit that, I'm done betting for that entire month. So I think that's important too, is only bet what you can afford to lose, just to kind of piggyback off your point and go back to emotional betting as well. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, of course, you're wearing that Justin Fields jersey. Do you find yourself betting more on your favorite teams, and not necessarily betting on the Bears, but also betting against the Bears, just going to the games you're going to be watching? You're watching a lot of Cubs games, a lot of Bears games, of course. Are you putting more money on those games, or does that ever play in a factor to you?
I personally love to bet my teams. Like you said, I'm not always betting for them. I have bet against them at times, but that's quote unquote a number one rule of sports betting is don't bet on your teams, because there's emotional investment that you might have a friend since first grade and he ends up being a shitty person and you still defend that friend because he's your friend, kind of thing. Same kind of thing with your sports teams. You fall in love with the Sammy Sosa's, Kerry Woods with the Cubs, and then now I'm a Cubs fan for life, and betting on the Cubs might or might not work. So no, I personally like to bet my teams because I can separate all that. I can say, hey, the Spurs, I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. The Spurs are not a great team. They're not always going to cover. But then you start looking at other patterns and, hey, the travel period or the this or the that, and you can start seeing maybe an underdog on the team, maybe a guy who really isn't supposed to play a lot, like Jordan Howard, for example, with the Bears. He was a backup running back, got drafted in the 5th round, I think. And they had Jeremy Langford in front of him on the depth chart. And Jeremy Langford was a total bum after that, but I think he got hurt, which gave Jordan Howard an opportunity, and he was like second in rushing yards, his rookie year. So probably NFL casual fan across the league, maybe a guy, maybe we'll say a Denver Broncos fan, for example, probably has no idea who Jordan Howard is. Probably had no idea who Jordan Howard was his rookie year, which ended up being his best year in his career, at least to this point. But yeah, I personally like betting on my teams because I can separate the emotion from what I think is going to happen. Bears Saints, for example, Bears always lose to the Saints. I knew they were going to lose that playoff game. I didn't know exactly how much by. I think it ended up being a little bit closer than I expected, but Bears will always lose to the Saints, and I'm a Bears fan. They went to the playoffs against the Saints. I was like, okay, like this is easy money. It's free money. Take it. So
I'm the same way when it comes to Bears Packers. You always know the Packers are going to beat the Bears. I'm a diehard Bears fan, but I'm also a realist. I said this, I think episode 1, I once said Lou Aldang was very close to LeBron James. That Cody is long gone. Like, I'm no longer a delusional Chicago Bulls fan, delusional Bears fan. So when it comes to my teams, I love betting on their games because I know I'm going to be watching those games. And I think, too, I know more about those teams than any other team. So I watch a lot of NFL, especially during the season, obviously. I'm watching Monday Night Football. I'm watching Thursday Night Football. I'm watching Sunday Night Football. And I'm watching mostly Red Zone through all day Sunday. And then I'm watching the Bears game, too. So I'm watching every single Bears game. So I know that team so well. And when they match up against a team like the Packers, or if they're playing the Ravens or something like that, I feel like I have an edge because I know that team better than some of the Vegas guys setting the odds. Now they're going to know the whole NFL better than me because that's their job. But I think me as a local fan that's in and out and listen to press conferences and watching every single game, I'm going to know that a little bit better. And as long as you separate your fandom from your knowledge of that team, I think you're going to do pretty decent. The Bears have won me a lot of money over the past few years, whether I'm betting on them or against them. So I definitely think it helps betting on your team that you're a fan of.
Yeah, and you can also start taking some sort of law of averages as well. NFL, especially NFL lines, you're probably going to see most teams go pretty close to 500 on the spreads. Even if, the Chiefs, for example, usually get those pretty heavy lines where they got to win by 16 and a half points or more to cover the spread. You might see the Chiefs go 16-0 in the regular season with Patrick Mahomes. And if they had a better offensive line, you might see them go 16-0, but their spread number might be 7-9. That'll happen sometimes. So you're going to see most teams go pretty close to 500, I think, in the NFL. So I think that's even a game in itself where, hey, the Bears have covered 4 spreads in a row because they're out playing where Vegas has them expected to be, but that's going to catch up to them. And then you can kind of, you're obviously basically what I'm getting at is you're paying attention to the spreads of your teams more too, because you want to be able to say when the Bears do beat the Packers, like, hey, we not only beat you, but we covered the spread by 15 points the other way, kind of thing. So I think that's another reason, I guess. And that's another, if you can separate the emotions and you can be good at that, I think that's a good thing to do. So
we are human, and that emotional betting does get to us sometimes. I mean, after I think it was the Falcons game during the Bears season, I believed in Nick Foles for a week. And I think I went heavy on the Bears against the Colts. And of course, I lost that game and realized, it's the Bears. It's the same old Bears. That's who they are. They're always going to disappoint me. So you got to put that away and, just bet with your head, not with your heart. Speaking of betting with your heart, I took Chelsea to lose this weekend in the Champions League final. Chelsea always seemed to screw me over whenever I bet on them for the last couple of years. So I went against them. I took Man City, who was favored. They were minus 110 on the money line. Chelsea came out on top 1-0. So I got that one wrong. So sorry, guys. I'm 0-1 in my soccer picks to start this podcast, but plenty less soccer left. I'll get back to 500 soon.
Yeah, one of your friends wasn't too happy with you on our Facebook comment.
Yeah, I guess he missed the point where I went 4-0 in my NBA picks. So
well, and that's another thing with emotional betting too, is obviously being a gambler, there's concern with it. There's a lot of people who get addicted to it, the same as they'd get addicted to drugs or anything like that.
Yep.
So I get a lot of concern when I lose from people who love me very much and I love equally, if not more. I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna say I'm gonna bet on the fact that I love them more. So no, I'm just kidding. But they, there's concern that they'll mention like, hey, like how much did you lose on that? Like, and I'll say X dollars, and they'll say like, oh, you shouldn't be betting that much, kind of thing, or stop gambling altogether. I've heard that a dozen times, and it's all perception. I think that everybody to an extent gambles. You gamble on work security, you gamble on how safe your job is in general. You gamble on, some people have been buying up Pokemon cards and flipping those. I've had friends who do that say, hey, at the end of the day, it's gambling basically. So
Yep.
It's not for the faint of heart. Gambling's not for the faint of heart. And it's, I would say, not really for addictive personalities who can't, teach themselves lessons along the way of, oh, hey, I shouldn't have bet that. And hey, I should have bet that. And, it's a learning process. And I think that this show kind of ultimately our goal is to kind of teach our viewers that there's going to be bumps in the road. We don't want We don't want to blow smoke down their throat saying like, oh, hey, we're winners. You're perfect on NBA. I'm perfect on golf. We want to educate people that there's bumps in the road with gambling, and the emotions are a big part of it. Sometimes that gets blown out of proportion where people start name calling players or start reaching out to them on Twitter. Hey, if you would have caught that first touchdown pass, I would have been paid $2,000. So you should Venmo me. Little dumb stuff like that.
They don't care about us.
It's all part of it. It should just be for fun. You should be gambling because you enjoy it, and apart from that, you should be able to look yourself in the mirror and say when you should or shouldn't be betting. And that's something that I should have done a little bit better this weekend. So
here's the thing too, to anybody that will talk down about gambling on sports or say it's a dumb thing to do or a waste of money. At the end of the day, it's a hobby, right? So one of my favorite hobbies is golf. I love to golf. I got out twice this past week. I spent about $110 doing that. Not to mention golf balls, golf shoes, golf clubs, all the money you pour in to that hobby. There's plenty of expensive hobbies out there. I don't know of another hobby that actually gives you an opportunity to win your money back and more. So when people talk about how sports gambling is a waste of money, I totally disagree. I think it's the only hobby out there that you can actually come out on top. It's an investment, if anything, and it's fun to do. And all the things that sports gambling has brought to me in my life ever since sixth grade, I'm glad I am doing it. I'm glad I'm still doing it. I'm never going to stop doing it. Doesn't mean you're addicted to it. We still want to make sure that you're doing it the right way, that you're not putting away more money than you can afford to lose. That's a big thing. But you do the same thing in hobbies. I'm not going to golf 6 times a week because I can't afford it. It's the same exact idea. So we all have our hobbies. We all spend money on hobbies. This just happens to be one of our hobbies.
I think metal detecting might be another hobby where you can come out on top, but
is that expensive? Is buying a metal detector up there? I mean, you probably find a cheap one on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I would assume so. I don't know.
Yeah.
My dad and my dad's family were into it for a while. My grandpa one time found a dog tag on the beach, and he called the phone number on there, and he said, "Hey, I found your dog tag," and the people said that dog died. So there's emotion in metal detecting as well. Apparently, is what I'm getting at.
Is that an open in your comedy or?
No, I've never used that on stage. I do stand-up comedy for viewers who don't know, but yeah, I've never used that one on stage.
Man. So let's talk about your golf fantasy this week. I should say fantasy golf. Your golf fantasy has pretty much been just betting on golf, right? So fantasy golf this week, there's a couple of guys you highlighted in your algorithm.
Yep.
You're not really looking to bet on top 10s this week. It's more DraftKings fantasy golf. I know you're a DraftKings fan. Some people like FanDuel. I did post this on our Facebook page. I was actually surprised. We got more people that liked FanDuel more people that like DraftKings than FanDuel. Your buddies Ryan and Matt both said they like DraftKings. Matt actually toggles between all of them: FanDuel, PointsBet, Barstool, and BetRivers. My buddy Chris said DraftKings as well. You use DraftKings, and you're going to be using DraftKings this week. Who do you like in fantasy?
Yeah, I use pretty much every sports book, but yeah, it's the Memorial Tournament, which was designed by Jack Nicklaus anyway, out in Ohio. It's a course that's about 7,400, 7,300 yards. I think last year it played a little bit shorter than it's going to play this year. But it was a really tough tournament last year. John Rahm won it, and that's kind of his thriving distance anyway. So he's a betting favorite. I kind of looked for more value, try to get a group of golfers. So the way DraftKings fantasy works is basically you get 6 golfers, and there's a salary cap. So you get X number of dollars to spend, and you have to basically pay for each golfer that you get. So instead of just going with the favorite, John Rahm is whatever, $10,000, $11,000. He's very expensive. He's a betting favorite. I kind of tried to mix it up a little bit. So I took Cameron Smith out of Australia, the mullet man. I really like him at that distance. He thrives at that distance. Seems like he's done well at a couple other Jack Nicklaus courses anyway. He's been struggling as of late. Last year at this tournament, he finished tied for 68th. So you're probably looking at me like, why the hell would you invest any DraftKings dollars into him? He's been playing a lot better this year, I think. His driving distance has gone up. His putting has gotten better. Really like him as like the low end favorite kind of guy. Another betting favorite, I think he was like third on betting favorites. I took Victor Hovland. He finished tied for 48th last year. He was a young golfer, again, a guy who's shown some improvement, a guy who has really started to thrive at that distance course as well. Next, I took Matthew Fitzpatrick. Last year at this tournament, he finished third. He's really started to come along, again, thrives at that distance. It's kind of a niche distance, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Basically that like 73 to 7,400 yards. It seems like guys will do really well at that. Like Sam Burns has come out of nowhere this year. I think both tournaments he's won was about 7,300 yards. Again, this course might play a little bit longer than that, but the other guys I took were Max Homa, who was cut last year at this tournament, been golfing better. Ricky Fowler, which is another surprise pick. He was also cut at this tournament. Ricky Fowler has been pretty terrible in the last year compared to where people expected him to be. He's one of the most popular golfers on the tour, especially after he got his Puma sponsorship and started golfing with the bright orange Puma hat and shoes. He golfed really well at the PGA Championship course, which was a very tough course, as you saw a lot of higher scores. And I think he's kind of starting to turn that corner. He really impressed me in that. And then when he previously did well, again, it was, around this distance. And then the last guy I got is Lanto Griffin, who last year at this course finished tied for 44th. Again, just does well at that distance, does well at other Nicklaus courses anyway. And then the last guy I got is Alex Noren. That's my seventh guy. He was cut at this tournament last year, but he's a guy who, if somebody went down, like if Lanto Griffin, he's another cheaper guy on the DraftKings. So he might be that fill-in anyway.
I may fade your picks for sure. Actually, I follow your picks. Sorry, I didn't want to say fade, because the one bad thing about living in Wisconsin is I can't bet on sports legally, but I can do DraftKings and FanDuel. And I've dabbled from time to time doing golf, basketball, football, and also baseball. So definitely fun to do the DraftKings and FanDuel. By the way, a lot of states recently, Colorado, California, Florida, are getting really close to legalizing betting. I just wonder when Wisconsin is going to finally cross that off the list. And I'm thinking we're going to be one of the last 10 states to do it. So it may be a few years before I can legally bet with you, Aaron.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's one of those courses this weekend that it's going to play tougher, I'm sure. That's why I wouldn't recommend picking a winner, because you might see your winner tied for the 54-hole lead or tied, for the lead through Saturday. And hey, he's got a chance and he might completely blow up. I think the weather last year at that tournament was really awful. And that's where Matthew Fitzpatrick actually had his best round and kind of really worked his way into third place. So you're going to see all kinds of funky things at this. I feel like no head-to-head tournament is safe until it's over. It's one of those things. So this is my way of betting it a little bit cheaper, I guess. Instead of investing a lot into head-to-heads, I'm just picking 6 golfers that I think will do well. I have a chance at winning $50,000 off a $8 bet. I have a chance at winning $10 off a $8 bet, and I have a chance of obviously losing that $8 altogether. But like I said, it's a way to bet cheaper with those 6 golfers, and hopefully at least 5 of them do well or something like that. So
now, when you do DraftKings fantasy golf, do you like to do the same lineup in multiple tournaments? Or do you ever switch your lineup up a little bit, maybe put that 7th guy in there a couple of times, or just go with your 6?
No, it doesn't usually work that way, because when you do well, so you find that sleeper golfer, like, so Lanto Griffin would be my sleeper in theory for this tournament. So Lanto Griffin, let's say he does super well. Let's say he wins the tournament as a complete underdog. Obviously, next week his price completely goes up. Golf is that type of game where it's streaky, and that's how they kind of market it to a sense. I mean, you haven't heard a lot about Ricky Fowler in the last year compared to when he was the hot prospect. Jordan Spieth, for example, he had a really bad year last year, and he started coming around, and now he's being marketed as Jordan Spieth again. So, I mean, if Lanto Griffin, let's say he wins this weekend and does super well in another tournament, like Sam Burns, for example, came out of nowhere, those dollar amounts get all changed up. So it's hard to use the same one tournament in and tournament out. So
What about in the same tournament? Do you ever do multiple lineups that same weekend in a couple different like $8 or $5 tournaments?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're going to get the $5 tournament pays 50,000 to first place, and then 37,418th place gets $6. So they profit $1. And then you're going to get the steeper ones where it's just 10 people and they all put in $100, and the winner wins a grand. You're going to get. So however you want to bet it, I will use pretty much that same lineup. I don't want to root for one of my lineups and then essentially root against one of my lineups elsewhere. I just want to pay attention to 6 golfers. That's hard enough as it is. So that's ideal. Ideally with golf, you're finishing first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then there's a big gap, because the way fantasy golf works is you'll get points for eagles, for birdies, holes in one, 3 birdies in a row, bogey-free rounds. So in theory, you could see 7th place score a little bit more points than 6th place or something like that. But obviously you want to put together that perfect lineup as close to it as you can. So John Rahm, I mean, John Rahm's the betting favorite this weekend. I love John Rahm. He's done very well for me, betting for, betting against. He's using different clubs this year. He switched from TaylorMade to Callaway, and that'll change your game a little bit. The equipment will change your game. He hasn't been putting as well this year as last, so I think that's my biggest reason of steering away from him. But then also just the cost justification, where hey, I'd rather not spend 10,000 of the 50,000 DraftKings gives me on one player. I'd rather get 3 pretty good players at $8,000 as opposed to the one, for 10. So
Absolutely. And you put John Rahm in your lineup. Let's say even if he does win the tournament, it doesn't necessarily mean you win your lineup. You have a better chance because you get the most points of that one guy. But you may have picked the guy that finished second, third, and fourth. The guy that had John Rahm in his lineup couldn't afford, 2 of those guys. You got 3 of them. So you got a little bit more points that way. So it's definitely a strategy. It's definitely a lot different than just betting top 10, top 5. Fantasy golf is a different monster. And I'm glad we have DraftKings and FanDuel, though, to do it. When it comes to DraftKings and FanDuel, especially in the NBA, I try to stay away from those because I just like betting on the games in general. I had a really good week. I am going to boast about a little bit. I went 4-0 on my game picks. I went 4-1 overall. I did take the the under in Bucks and Heat in game 2. I got that one wrong, but otherwise my picks went perfect as far as game picks. I'm going to try to do that again this week, starting with Brooklyn and Boston, game 5. Brooklyn is by far the better team here. We all know that going in. Boston was able to steal 1 game out of this series. So Brooklyn leads 3-1 at the moment. So game 5 tips off at 6:30 on Tuesday night. Brooklyn, the line right now, they're 12.5-point favorites. All 3 wins Brooklyn's had in this postseason against Boston have been by at least 10 points. The last 2 wins were by 15 or more. I actually love Brooklyn in this game. I know it's a big number. I just don't think Boston has nearly enough firepower. And the game 4 was really a dominant display by Durant, Irving, and Harden. Harden had 18 assists. Durant had 42 points. Irving had 39 points. Joe Harris was hitting his shots. He finished with 14. I just don't see how Boston keeps this within single digits. And when you look at that 12.5, I really don't think it's that high. I think it's right about where it should be. Brooklyn, of course, won game 4 by 15 points. I think they do it again and especially after the Bucks swept the Heat. I don't think the Nets want to give them any more rest. I think they just want to get this over with, and I think they're going to be focused in Game 5, where some teams you see come in with a 3-1 lead. Maybe they were kind of a little bit lackadaisical. They know they're the better team. They know they don't have to play as hard to beat them. I don't think you see that with the Nets. I think they're here to make a statement, and they're going to get ready for Milwaukee. They're not going to mess around with Boston, and they're going to win by more than 12.5 points.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I actually teased game 4 to 13.5 points. They won by 15. I thought the whole way. I mean, even after the first quarter, I think the Celtics had a 1-point lead, and I wasn't even really remotely concerned. I just thought the Nets are going to do it. It might be the only other thing I could say, I guess, is it might be a better live bet opportunity. It might be one of those things where you pay attention to it a little bit. And if the Nets go on a big run right out of the gate, then maybe you want to take Boston plus 30 or plus 20 and a half or something. However that line goes, that might be a good one to live bet. Or if the Celtics get off to a run and maybe that line moves down to Nets minus 8 points, you'd be a little bit more comfortable with the 8 points, obviously. But I agree with you. If I'm just solely, I get one chance to bet it, 12.5, take it or leave it, I'd bet the Nets minus 12.5.
Yeah, and usually I don't take lines that big, but I think Brooklyn is that much better than Boston. I don't think they're going to waste time. Another series, we'll go out west. That's going to happen on Tuesday night is Denver and Portland. This has been a really weird series. I took Denver to win this series in 7 games. So far right now it's 2-2, so that looks pretty good. Game 5 is back in Denver, so they're at home. They're currently 1.5 point favorites. I've mentioned this multiple times. If anybody's -2 or less, I don't take the spread. I just go straight money line. So I do like Denver to bounce back. They had a horrible showing at Portland in Game 4. Michael Porter Jr. did nothing. Nikola Jokic had one of his worst games of his playoff career. I love Denver to bounce back. I like it to be a close game, though. I think Dame will bounce back, too. He only had 10 points Game 4 in that blowout win. I think Dame has a big night. I think Jokic has a bigger night. I think Porter comes back strong, and I got Denver winning. It's going to be close within 5 points, but I'll take them on the money line.
See, I'd take Portland on the spread at 1.5. I'll just take it. So I guess we could, in theory, both be right if it's a 1-point game. But I think Portland might be the better team with Jamal Murray hurt. I'm gonna stand on that at this point. From what I've watched, Damian Lillard didn't really show up that last game they won. He was 1 for 10 shooting or something undame-like anyway. So I think he bounces back. I agree with you there. And I think he's a little bit stronger than Jokic. I feel like Dame really wears his heart on his sleeve. And I think eventually you're going to start seeing him do some stuff in the playoffs that we haven't really seen quite just yet.
Yeah, Dame is one of my favorite players in the NBA. He's a guy that reminds me of a Kobe Bryant or a Michael Jordan, just that guy that's going to do everything he can to win a game. And he's also a guy that is loyal, especially in today's NBA. You see so much player movement. Guys like Damian Lillard, guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo, they're not leaving their teams. They're staying with their hometown teams no matter the point that they haven't won a championship yet. They want to bring a championship to their hometown. I think it's going to be really tough to do for Dame Lillard, but he's definitely going to go out there and show up. He's not going to be a guy that's going to have 10 points in a losing effort. He had 10 points in a winning effort, but if they're down 20, he's not having 10 points. That's for sure. He's going to have at least 30. He's going to do everything he can to win the game. So it's going to be exciting, though. I do think no matter who wins this game, the other team's going to win Game 6 and force a Game 7. So if Denver wins Game 5, I think Portland takes Game 6. And if Portland takes Game 5, I think Denver takes Game 6. And we'll see a Game 7 in Denver. So that should be pretty exciting. The next game on Tuesday night, I've went back and forth with the last couple of days, the Lakers and Suns. Suns came back and won Game 4 at tie series at 2-2. Anthony Davis left with an injury in his groin. He's unlikely to play. Not officially listed as out, but chances are he's not going to play. And Vegas is moving the line towards Phoenix. They're -5. They are back at home. And the Lakers, I think, are in big trouble if Anthony Davis is out because LeBron, I still think, is the best player on that team. He is more of a facilitator than anything. And Davis is really the only guy in the Lakers other than LeBron that you can count on. And without him, you're counting on Caldwell Pope. You're counting on Caruso. You're counting on Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
Those aren't guys you want to count on. This reminds me a lot of LeBron's Cavs team in 2018, where he's the only superstar. And
Yep.
it's tough to win in a league when you're going up against a young Phoenix team where DeAndre Ayton doesn't seem scared of the moment. He's playing great basketball. Booker, we knew he was going to have ice in his veins. And Chris Paul, even though he's been hobbled with injuries, Cameron Payne has stepped up. Has been an excellent backup point guard, and Chris Paul could still be a major factor. So I think the Lakers should be worried. This line right now at -5, I don't really like it at the moment. I want to know if Anthony Davis is playing or not. If he's for sure out, then I like Phoenix -5, but we may see that line creep up to 6 or 7.
Yeah, and you don't have to take a pick either, because I definitely would not take a pick. I would basically at this point say Lakers in 7. If I was betting that series at all, it's either over unders or it's basically saying that, hey, the Lakers will win it in 7. That's my thought process. I could see the Lakers going down 3-2, and then LeBron says, hey, I'm LeBron. It's time to turn on the burners a little bit. Win game 6, win game 7. Okay, yeah, it was never really a worry. I will not bet against playoff LeBron. I've said that every episode so far on this show. Still won't bet against playoff LeBron to lose in the first round. Sure, he could lose in the second round. He could lose, Western Conference Finals, whatever. But I'm saying the Lakers will still win this first round. I don't know about game 5, and I would not take a pick with it either way. So
I agree with you. I may decide to take a pick, but that won't be until the day of the game. But right now, I'm staying away from it. I still love the Lakers to win this series. I'm not scared about that. Davis, he is unlikely to play game 5, and they're not listing him as out yet. I assume he'll be ready for game 6. I could be wrong, but I bet he'll be back game 6, and then he'll be there game 7 if they need to be. So I still think the Lakers win this series, but I'm not touching game 5, not knowing if Anthony Davis is going to play or not. Knicks Hawks. This has been a fun series to watch, especially at Madison Square Garden. That crowd has been going nuts. All you really need to make New York happy is make the playoffs, apparently, if you're a Knicks fan, because that crowd is bonkers. One of the most fun crowds I've seen so far in this playoff series. It's been a fun series, too. Really kind of a coming out party for Trae Young. I love his character. He's kind of like a heel in pro wrestling. Like he's not afraid of Knicks fans. He's going back at them. He reminds me a little bit of Reggie Miller back in the mid-'90s when he did the choke sign to Spike Lee. So I like Atlanta's team. I told you this going into it. I think they're far more talented than New York. I think the Knicks are a team, classic Tom Thibodeau team, where they're going to play 110% every single game. It's going to win them a lot of regular season games. But once the playoffs come, there's that next level you need to go to where you're not playing that highest level in the regular season. New York doesn't have that level to go to. Derrick Rose has been phenomenal. Julius Randle has been a dud, completely different than what we've seen in the regular season from him. Trae Young's been great. Bogdan Bogdanovic, I'm sure the Bucks are still crying about that trade getting nixed in the offseason because they could definitely use him. I like Atlanta in this game. They're +1.5. I'll take them on the money line. I think they win it outright. I think they close out the Knicks in 5.
yeah, I think they're looking good, and it's really eating my words from our first episode where I said that the Knicks would win that series, because I still don't like this Atlanta squad all the way through. I'll take the Knicks on game 5 just to differentiate from you, but I don't say that with a lot of confidence. I'm glad I didn't really bet that series apart from game 1, which I did lose that one. But I would have had the Knicks winning the series, and it's hard to stand on that in a 3-1 series without the Knicks having a LeBron type player or a Luka Doncic type player even. If Julius Randle is your top option, and then you have kind of a good supporting cast that's okay. I mean, the East is a pretty weak overall anyway, and the Knicks getting in there, they had a good regular season. I think you're right that their time is ultimately done. But I like them to go to the 6th game at least. So
I like the Knicks team. Obviously, I love Thibodeau. I'm a Bulls fan, so it's fun to see Derrick Rose and Taj Gibson still playing. But when you're relying on Alec Burks to make shots for you, you're not going to win a playoff series. And that's where the Knicks are going to have to go into the offseason. They're going to have to find another guy. They have cap room, so they should be fine moving forward. And New York looks like a fun place to play, right? Like, who doesn't want to play in Madison Square Garden? That's a place where Jordan loved to play. It's a place where Kobe loved to play. Carmelo, LeBron, they all love to play there. So I think they're attract a big name free agent. They'll be better next year, but this is just not their year.
I think Atlanta could just be basically a shooting guard away from being a little bit more special to me. I had them at complete pretenders in the regular season, and I don't think they're contenders to win just yet. But I think that, Trae Young showing us, like you said, it has kind of been an arrival party for him. So.
Yeah, a lot of people look at that draft and they say, "Oh man, Atlanta got hosed. They traded Luka Doncic for Trae Young." Obviously, I'm not trying to say Trae Young is Luka Doncic, but to say they got hosed on that trade, like Trae is the real deal. He's an excellent point guard, and he really improved this year from last year. His shots are down, his turnovers are down. He's playing more of a team-oriented basketball with shooters they have in Atlanta. So he's becoming that leader as a point guard, and I think he's going to continue to grow and grow. He's going to be a future All-Star and possibly a future MVP candidate. But we'll see. It's exciting to watch these Eastern Conference teams really be competitive, especially with the last several years, Western Conference just dominating. The East is finally arriving now. Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, Trae Young has always been a poor man's Steph Curry. I know a lot of people were not on the Trae Young wagon when he was going into the draft. They said he was going to be a bust right away. I completely disagreed because basically why'd they say that? He started kind of struggling shooting a little bit, toward, I think he was a first round exit of March Madness, his season at Oklahoma there. Steph Curry, yeah, he did a little bit better in March Madness one year, but he also had, there's videos on SportsCenter of his mom in the crowd saying like, "Steph, you're overshooting." Shooters shoot, and shooters are going to get better. And I feel like, it's kind of one of those things where people watching the show would be like, "That guy just said Trae Young is like Steph Curry." No, I said he's a poor man Steph Curry. So I want to clarify that, say that a second time. I think he's going to be really good. He's not going to be quite Steph Curry, obviously, but he plays a similar game style. He's a shooter, and like you said, he's got that mentality where he'll take any garbage that fans give him and he'll throw it right back to them. So
I do love players like that. They're not afraid of the moment, and they do trash talk. We need more of that in sports because it is entertainment at the end of the day. So I love Atlanta money line. You're going Knicks. You're going down with the ship. We'll see what happens. Another game that I'm not really enjoying placing a bet on is the Clippers and Mavericks. You were in a point where you picked the Clippers to come out of the West, and they were down 2-0 to Dallas, losing both games on their home court. They've come back strong and won 2 games in Dallas, now tying this series at 2-2. So it's back to a best-of-3 series, and they have home court advantage back. They're -7 in Game 5. I have no feel on this game whatsoever. It wouldn't shock me if Dallas came out and took a win in LA. It wouldn't shock me the Clippers came out and dominated again, and Kawhi just went off and they won by 10. So I don't like betting this game. I'm very excited to see what happens. It's kind of one of those situations where I'm going to wait and see who wins this game, and then I'm going to probably bet heavy on Game 6. I'll have a better feel for it. But after those first 4 games, I have no idea. I don't know.
Goes back to what our topic of the day is with the emotional betting, because that's all sports talk was if these Clippers get swept, is Kawhi going to leave town? Is, Paul George really even a second option? Is he maybe a fourth option? All that sports talk, it's all just hearsay. It's talk. It's in the moment. As I mentioned last week, sometimes you see those lines move where I think in Game 1, the Clippers were like 6.5-point favorites. And then in Game 2, I was expecting that line to go down. I was expecting, since the Mavs stole Game 1, I was expecting, okay, that is probably going to be like a 4.5-point favorite, 4.5, but it went the other way. And that's why I steered clear of Game 2. And then Game 3, you finally saw the line go down. And I think Game 4, they were still a favorite. Now it's tied up 2-2. But yeah, it's emotional betting. I hope I'm wrong, because Luka Doncic probably became the funnest player to watch in the NBA, I think, over the last couple of years anyway. He's the more you pay attention to him in the playoffs, even, he's playing chess out there. He's talking to the refs on every single play. When he makes the big shot, he's, waving his finger. He's getting his team pumped up. When he feels like he's getting fouled, he's saying, "Hey, I'm getting fouled. I'm getting bumped on the arm every time." He's completely in the moment, and I hope I'm wrong. I want to see playoff Luka take the Mavs, take a bad Mavs to the finals, just like LeBron took a bad Cavs team to the finals. I guess the only downside of that is eventually people might end up hating Luka Doncic because, hey, he's this. I mean, it's the same thing. People loved LeBron from 03 to 07. And then I think they kind of started hating him after he went to the Heat. But I really hope people don't ever hate Luka, because
He will be hated. He will be hated because people are just jealous. That's why people hate Tom Brady. That's why people hate LeBron James. All these guys that come out as rookies, second year player, third year player, and they're the underdogs. Everybody roots for them. Everybody loves the underdog, which I don't understand. Why would you love the underdog? The team that isn't supposed to win? Like, shouldn't you love the winners, right? I mean, for me personally, I just love the team that covers, right? Those are the great teams for me. So I do love Luka, though. I hope I'm wrong, too, because I picked the Clippers to win this series in 6. I'm on Barkley's side, though. I think they suck. I can never trust them. That's why I don't have them come out of the West. But I do think they win this series in 6. I hope I'm wrong, too, though. I hope Dallas crushes them in Game 5. But I'm not putting my money on this game. I'll probably bet on Game 6 once that line comes out and after we see what really happens in Game 5. So.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that you're going to see, I mean, at the end of the day, Luka's still a kid. I mean, he's not a legal kid, but he's still a kid. You're going to see playoff Luka have his moments in this series still. I mean, last year, Mavs Clippers was a very competitive, exhilarating series. And by next year, I think the Mavs are definitely going to win at least one round. I hope that they can bring in another star for Luka. And I hope that, like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I just, as fun as that series has been to watch so far, I want the Mavs and Clippers to have a rivalry. And I hope that Kawhi ultimately stays and Paul George ultimately stays. I want Mavs Clippers every year for the next 10 years. So,
dude, it's been a really fun first round of the playoffs. So many storylines already. There's more parity in the NBA than ever. I don't get this whole idea that fans think the league is watered down. You can look at every team and find a borderline star. We talked about Julius Randle. I don't think he's poised to be the best player on a team. But every other team, I mean, Phoenix, you got Booker and Paul. Lakers, obviously, LeBron and AD. Portland, you got Dame. Dallas, you have Jokic. Brooklyn, you got 3 guys. Even Boston, you still have Jason Tatum. And then the Clippers and Dallas, you got Kawhi versus Luka. So you have stars all across the league. And it really goes down to, especially today's NBA, when the 3-point shot is so prevalent, you could see upsets, maybe not in the 1-7s, the 1-8 series and the 2-7 series, with the exception of Lakers Phoenix, but definitely in the 4-5 matchups, the 3-6 matchups. A lot of series are really, really close.
Not to get too off topic or anything like that, but I think that's what you're going to start seeing with the NFL a lot too, is you're going to start seeing 32 good quarterbacks, where you and I both know as Bears fans that it feels like there's not 32 good quarterbacks in the league at sometimes. But I feel like, kind of the way Jordan and LeBron have ultimately bettered the game of basketball, made kids want to play basketball, made kids really, put their heart and soul into the game of basketball. You kind of see the flip side, like Tom Brady, for example, making kids want to play quarterback. I mean, Tom Brady's at that age where, I mean, I was a kid when I watched him, and I'm 27 years old now. I could be in the NFL in theory if I played quarterback. I'm old enough, certainly. So, the Bears. I mean, the Bears took Justin Fields this year. There's obviously a lot of excitement here. The Jaguars, they've been another team with a bad quarterback forever. They took Trevor Lawrence. I mean, but basically there was 5 quarterbacks in this draft that a lot of teams that needed help at quarterback would have been happy with. So that's basically what I'm getting at, is that when you have those guys like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady, they completely change the sport long term. And that's why I think ultimately, okay, you get a couple of years of the super teams, it's gonna even itself out. You're gonna see the more parity anyway. So I would agree with you that the parity is back on the rise, and it's not about a super team anymore. I mean, Steph Curry was had an MVP like season, and look where the Warriors are at this point. So
yeah, and to be honest, there's never been parity in the NBA. It's always been built on dynasties with the Celtics and Lakers in the '80s, Celtics in the '60s, the Bulls in the '90s, the Lakers in the 2000s, your Spurs from early 2000s all the way to mid 2010s. The Heat had their little run, the Warriors had their run. So it's always been built on dynasties. There's a few exceptions, Detroit in '04 and Dallas in 2011. But I think finally, with the exception of the big three in Brooklyn, I mean, every team's got a superstar, and every playoff team at least has a pretty solid supporting cast for the most part. I mean, maybe not Washington, but even Memphis, they're 8th seed. They're on the rise too. They already stole a game against Utah, and they have an awesome point guard in John Morant. Some great role players around him. So it's really a fun time to be a basketball fan. And as your point to the NFL, you see all the young quarterbacks. Justin Herbert balled out last year. Joe Burrow balled out before he got hurt. He's back this year's a second-year player, probably poised to win comeback player of the year. There's so many young quarterbacks that are really playing well in the NFL. And I think that's really cool to see, especially as a sports fan, that the next generation is going to be in good shape when watching both these sports. So very exciting moving forward. Another thing I'm really excited about is watching you win on your futures bet in the NHL. I know you were sweating it out. So tell us a little bit about that, because last week on the podcast, you said win Vegas advances. They were up 3-1 at that point. They lost the next 2 games and went to a game 7. What were you thinking before that game started, and then obviously after?
Yeah, I was thinking that in general, when people who know my sports bets out of this show probably know I'm not very arrogant about it. I don't count a chicken before it hatches. But here I am on this show. You got the bright lights on me. You got the microphone in my face. And I say, win Vegas advances. It's a 3-1 lead. Of course, they got it. They have too good of goalie play. And Minnesota, yeah, they tied up the series. It was 3-3. And I thought, that $20, it's over $20 from October or something like that. I made that bet in October, $20. Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights will win the Stanley Cup. As I kind of joked last week, Vegas isn't necessarily built on winners. And I was thinking, man, Minnesota, their matchup, I mean, it was a really tough matchup. Minnesota played them super, super well in the regular season. And obviously the way the playoffs went, they had to play Minnesota in the first round. So I was thinking, well, I might have shot myself in the foot by making a really bold, arrogant statement saying that win Vegas advances. So that was ultimately, I guess, the biggest downside of it. I don't want to sound super arrogant and then it come back to bite myself in the foot. With all that being said, no, I'm kidding. The San Antonio Spurs will win next year's NBA championship. I guarantee.
I'll give you 100-1 odds on that, and I will bet you.
If somebody gives you 100-1 odds, you take them.
No matter what.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, good luck to your Vegas Golden Knights. I'm excited for this week of sports. A lot of good things going on. You got Aaron's golf picks on his Draftkings for fantasy golf. You got my NBA picks. Let us know when we're wrong. We do not care. We're going to be wrong a lot. We're just hoping we're right a little bit more.
We hope you keep the same energy when we're right. We hope
exactly.
Yeah. I love nothing more than my friends who text me and saying, "What's the bet tonight?" And I'm like, "I haven't even looked yet, bro." And they're like,
my biggest issue with anybody that comes at me after a prediction is I have the balls to put that prediction out and you don't have your prediction. So where was yours before? Tell me before my bet loses that I'm going to be wrong or something like that. Then I respect you a little bit more.
It's all on tape. I actually, when the sports book opened up here at the casino, not too far from my house, I went to watch NFL games because they have the NFL Sunday. So they have every game. You can watch whatever game you want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember it was right after it became legalized in Iowa. And I remember just seeing so much emotion boiled down in that room of cheers, boos, some guy yelling, "Oh, it's James White scoring against the Dolphins. I hate James White. He's a piece of shit." And it's like, what did James White do? And then a little bit later, I see 2 friends getting in a fight. And one guy says, "Well, don't yell at me just because he missed a field goal." Again, all boils down to, I guess, today's lesson that it's not for the faint of heart, and there will be emotions riding on it. So,
Absolutely, but that's what makes it fun, right?
yeah, just keep that same energy when you're winning, keep that same energy when you're losing, and make sure you're being smart about it.
Man, 3 episodes down, going great so far. Gramblers podcast. Make sure to follow us on Facebook. Again, we'll get those MP3s up on Spotify and on iTunes very shortly. Website's coming as well, so that will be out there. Aaron and I will give you picks throughout the week since we only do the show once a week. Maybe sometime in the future, once we get big, we'll do 2 times a week.
Yeah. We can do it full time. Yeah.
Quit our jobs and move on to podcasting full time. That'd be sweet. Or we just hit on 100% of our bets, and we can quit our jobs.
There you go. That works too.
That probably won't happen.
Also, we'll also be bringing in guests soon. So if you're tired of my big forehead and sweat and Cody's Brewers shirt and White Sox picture in the back, you'll start hearing from some other people, other perspectives as well too. So
yeah, a lot of big things coming, a lot more topics as we move along. That's going to do it here for episode 3, though. For Aaron Graff, I am Cody Grant. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us this week.